for what I'm calling this double feature review. Yeah, I know, it's pretty cool, right? One is Pixar's Elemental, which is their first original... One is Pixar's Elemental, which is their first original movie since March of 2020, releasing in theaters. And the second is, well, The Flash. How? 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 Flash. And Pixar's Elemental. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reviewing the Cineweb. For this episode, as I've said, we're doing a double feature. Yeah, why not? I figured that just because it's all the summer movie season and, I don't know how much time I got. I don't know how much time you got to watch multiple things. So why not just cover both together? Because it's summer movie season, we've got both The Flash and Elemental releasing this past weekend. As I've said, both have had quite the treacherous journey to get a theatrical release. Well, Elemental, we don't know that it had a treacherous journey behind the scenes, but given how 3 Pixar movies were released on Disney Plus in a row, and then Lightyear last year released in theaters and did not do too well for them, even though it was a spin-off connected to Toy Story. That's definitely a treacherous journey. And for The Flash, we have so many things going on with that. We have the current state of DC really shifting heads right now, because even though James Gunn is now the head of DC Studios along with Peter Safran, it's definitely, in terms of the films that they've already shot, you can see that sort of changing of figureheads there. And then also, I think we all know the elephant in the room. Horton, where are you? Ezra Miller's behavior, to put it one way, is it's definitely put this movie in a very interesting position. On top of that, just the other DC movies as of late have not been doing super well at the box office. I'm thinking just namely Shazam. The Batman did alright last year, both critically and box office wise, but both movies, they're really in an interesting place right now, especially at the box office, where neither are doing what the studios, both Pixar and DC, had been hoping for. It's my job to watch these things, and to some extent, I was still excited for both movies. Now, for this double feature, I kind of wanted to cover it in the order of the movies that I have seen, and I'm just gonna go right into Horton Hears a Who. Wait, what? Why is Horton making so many appearances? My brain is so chaotic. The Flash. As I've already said, it's definitely been a long road ahead for this movie. No pun intended with how he goes all fast and stuff. It's gone through probably more directors and revisions that I have hands. Like, I remember at one point Lord and Miller were supposed to do the movie. They dropped out. Rick Famuyiwa was going to do the movie at one point. He dropped out. John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, who recently did the Dungeons and Dragons movie and also Game Night a couple years ago, which I really loved, they dropped out. This movie was announced in 2014, and there's releasing in 2023. And only part of that is because of the pandemic. That's a lot. That's a lot for a movie. I mean, I think Uncharted is the last thing that has had that many years before something's gotten a release. Eventually, Andy Muschietti boarded the film and stuck with it. I enjoyed what he did with both It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. Definitely leaned towards It Chapter 1 a little bit more, but when he was on board and seemingly it was actually in the process of filming, they announced that Michael Keaton was going to be coming back as freaking Batman. Nowadays, we're more used to actors coming back to their roles so much after, No Way Home, obviously, Indiana Jones, you name it. So many actors are going back to the roles that they played 30-something odd years ago to do an older take on it. And Michael Keaton is obviously no exception. And then, oh yeah, they also announced, I can't even remember how long ago they announced this, that they would be doing, oh, I don't know, Flashpoint? I'm not even the biggest Flash fan specifically, but I've always enjoyed the Flash whenever I've seen him in things, although admittedly not as much as some other heroes like Batman, Superman, obviously. But, you know, the Flash is just, it's a hard superhero to not enjoy with the type of personality he has, with his powers. Obviously, he's probably, like, him and Sonic the Hedgehog, my boy, are probably I want to say, like, they're pretty neck and neck for the most popular fast characters, if you want to call it that way. And for the Flash's first movie, they're doing the most ambitious, famous, infamous stories, which is Flashpoint. And everyone, when they announced that, everyone knew what they were doing. They were going to use this film to reboot the whole thing, and it's an open secret. It's not even really a secret that this movie is going to reboot the DC universe as we know it. Yeah, it's definitely just been an interesting journey with that regard. And then we have, you know who, Ezra Miller. Could you have done your crap before they had started production? It would have saved a lot of people's heads, sanity, all that. They have a criminal record. They've done a lot of things that are very not pleasant. This movie has been so expensive for Warner Brothers and so crucial to DC's plan going forward that they had no choice but to release it with Ezra Miller still being stapled on. And I know a lot of people who are not seeing this movie because of Ezra Miller's reputation. And, you know, rightfully so. I don't blame them or you if you're watching this and thought to yourself, I don't think this is a case where I can separate art from the artist. I completely understand that. I personally still felt like I should go see the movie because A, it's just a fascinating case study, even aside from the quality of the movie itself, and B, because a lot of other people put a lot of effort into this movie. I mean, that's the case with any movie, right? But you could just see from the way that Andy Muschietti was talking about it on social media. Michael Keaton just seemed giddy to be Batman. I'm going to get to Sasha Calle obviously a little bit more later, but I remember so vividly the announcement video that she was going to be playing Supergirl. It's like my favorite announcement that someone has gotten the part of anything. Obviously, specifically a comic book movie, but it's just her reaction was so genuine. And you just feel that there was a lot of love put into this movie. And even when I saw the first trailer, I was like, this does look good. It looks good. I was hearing weirdly good buzz. I say weirdly just because of how much crap this movie's gone through to get made and get released. And now it has been released. And as for the movie itself, it is a lot of things. It is, honestly, the best way to put it is that it is the most DC movie out there in terms of like the extended universe. DC, I'm not like thinking like the Dark Knight or whatever, like DC, like trying to be Marvel. There's so much going on, so much plots, tonal shifts, all that, and yet somehow the movie has a genuinely good heart and was a lot of fun. It's odd in that regard. It is definitely a lot, and this is coming from someone who could process things like Across the Spider-Verse, you know, pretty naturally. It's quite a lot of movie, but I'd be lying to say I didn't enjoy it at all. I did enjoy it, and for the most part, I would say it's an enjoyable movie and is a good movie. It has a really good heart. It has a lot going for it. It's very much a superhero movie. It's not, because there's some superhero movies in the genre that are trying to be something different. Joker was trying to be a 70s Scorsese film. Logan tried to be a Western. the Dark Knight movies tried to be crime dramas. This movie is just pure comic book movie, superhero movie fun, and also drama. It's a pretty good mix, and all that really does stem from Andy Muschietti in the director's chair. I kind of wanted to, it was tough in my head whether I want to open with him or close with him with my positives, because Andy Muschietti directed the ever-living shit out of this movie. He does so much with the camera work, so many really inventive ways that he captures every action sequence or even regular sequence of characters just talking. He captures the tone very well. This is, The Flash, so there's obviously a lot of natural comedy involved, but then he also captures the stakes of it very well. With some other horror directors jumping into a superhero movie, I didn't really feel a lot of horror elements, but you could see the parts where the Andy Muschietti from It coming in, which is how imaginative some of these visuals are. There's a lot of visuals that are really insane in the movie. Not like pleasant to look at, really wow, I never would have thought to do that type of shot. I'm thinking a lot of people have been talking about the opening sequence. It just feels like what you would expect from like an episode of Justice League or whatever DC animated project, with the way that the visuals are coming together, the way Flash is just maneuvering through the, catastrophe that he's trying to save, the opening movie prologue type thing. He just directed this movie so insanely well. And he understood the characters too. Like the way he captured every character felt right for that character. It wasn't a type of case where some comic book movies do this, to where it'll be like, it's just they have the movie's lens of viewing things and they'll view it through that. And then there's this movie's view of things where even though Barry Allen is the protagonist, or in this case, the Barry Allens, like he seamlessly switches the tone and the directional choices from the sillier moments with the Flash or other characters. There's a lot of Batman stuff in the movie with Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton. He really knows how to do Batman well. He knows how to capture the action well. All the stuff with the Flash and the time travel sequences, or just him running around like, the Flash does, looked really good and really inventive. I haven't watched the Flash show in so many years, and I know my younger brother's a really fan, so he'd probably be the one to talk to about that, but it definitely felt different than the way that they captured the Flash's super speed there, but also it feels similar to where it's like, yes, obviously there's a certain way that you would capture that type of thing. A lot of slow-mo, all that jazz. Andy Muschietti definitely put his stamp on it. I don't know, it's just the movie feels very fluid. It's a very fast-paced movie, even though it does take moments to breathe. It has a lot of good drama where characters are able to just talk and just have banter or talk whatever is going through with the story at the moment. Andy Muschietti he really did a good job with this movie. I was very happy and relieved about that, and also not surprised to a certain extent. He definitely knew what he was doing. He had a very good handle at the steering wheel, if you will, with maneuvering the story in all of its different destinations, and that is, obviously it's a really good thing. This is also Flashpoint, so there was also a lot of characters involved, so I guess to sort of get into the heat of the characters and the actors, how am I going to do this with Ezra? Oh boy. So I don't condone what Ezra Miller did, but just strictly talking about their performance in the movie, Ezra Miller was very good in the movie. That is definitely the case. I admit I haven't seen either of the Justice League movies, the Whedon cut or the Snyder cut. I actually can't remember what other DC projects he has been, but because of how long it's taken this movie to really come out, this is this is their first leading chance as the Flash, and they also have a double take on the performance that I think works very well. It actually gives the movie quite a lot of interplay back and forth between Barry Allen, like, the present version trying to grapple with what he did with changing the timeline and all that and all the Flashpoint stuff. And then the younger Barry Allen is like the parts of him that don't have to have that worry, that haven't had to be raised as a superhero or as someone who lost their parents very young. They did a very good job with both sides of the performance. It's actually kind of surprising that for a movie that is primarily a time travel movie, that you haven't actually seen that many that are corely based around the future present version of the character interacting with the past version of themselves. And it creates a lot of interesting dichotomy for both versions of Ezra Miller to bounce off of. So for the sake of this review, purely separating the art from the artist, Ezra Miller did a very good job as the Flash. I can't compare it to what else they have done in the role, aside from like tiny snippets that I've seen from the other DC projects they've been in. But from what I've heard, this seems to be the best performance that they've given as the Flash. In a world where they never did any of that stuff, it would be like, oh crap, yeah, I would definitely want them to stay in, because they put a lot of emotion. They carry a lot with this movie, and they do a good job. And the way they handled the karaoke Flash, I don't know if the Flash would really be good at karaoke. I think Barry would just be like going through like too many different thoughts. Get him high, yeah. Show him what I've got. They handled the character of Barry Allen in multiple regards very well here, even though I had some hesitation with them doing the Flashpoint storyline. It does give the character of Barry Allen quite a lot to do and quite a lot to grow, and it just showcases all sides of that character. So for kids who like didn't have a DC cartoon growing up or didn't watch the CW show that just ended, it's probably a very good introduction of that character to them. And I hope that whatever happens with the Flash and other DC movies, that it continues with the character at the very least, because I like what they did with the character, and the Flash is one of the more famous DC characters. So I definitely am really excited to see where they go with this interpretation of Flash. Obviously, we have Michael Keaton returning as Batman, which is just a long time coming, obviously. It's a shame that this could be the only chance we have to see Keaton returning as Batman, given the Batgirl cancellation, which I'm not a fan of, nor is it likely that there are going to be other projects with him as Batman for the future. But Keaton, he loves this character, and you could see it. Me and my brother, we both kind of had a bathroom break at a similar point in the movie, so I know there was a part of a scene that I missed with him, but other than that, he gave a very raw performance. I don't want to say Dark Knight Returns, since Ben Affleck's covered a lot of that with his version, but a very, I don't know, obviously a grizzled Batman. Duh, he's Batman. It's definitely a lot of shades of Batman Beyond, but he just has a lot of fun just being Batman again. You could see the pain that he could feel just and how long he's been doing this. He's so much older. He's been retired for I don't know how long in the context of the story. But you can also see that like pain when he's like seeing how Barry was able to actually save his parents. Like that stuff that he's been saying in the trailers, it stays in the movie, and it gives him a lot to work with emotionally. And in terms of the action, no matter how much Keaton was actually in the suit for those scenes or not, it's really badass. It was so much fun just to see Keaton back in the movie. I'm just so happy for Michael Keaton. Whether this is his last or not, he really gave it his all. with his version of old Batman here. Sasha Calle was not in the movie probably as much as I had hoped her to be. What they did with Supergirl was very interesting, but probably an undeveloped aspect of the movie, which is, I'll get into it again later. She does a very, very good job as Supergirl. This version of Supergirl has definitely gone through a lot. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there's a certain comic book storyline that I'm familiar with Superman, Supergirl, that I realized they were kind of doing a version of, which was, to me, fascinating. You could see the pain in her, and you could also like see like the fact that she does care a lot. I felt so happy for her when I saw that announcement video, and she does so good with such limited screen time here that with Supergirl movie that I know they're developing, I really hope that they keep her as Supergirl because I want to see her more as that character. Even though I don't think they did enough with her here, hey, I still want to see them do more with her. Other performances. Remember the things, Alex. Performance that honestly, the one that I wasn't as aware of, and I also forgot their name, so whoever played Barry's mom, she was really good. You could see from those split parts of the movie where you get to see her be, Barry's mom. It's a type of performance that's like, wow, you could see why Barry would want to risk pretty much everything to go back in time and save her. She really has a lot of heart in this movie with her limited screen time, which is insanely impressive. Like, I'm thinking of a scene towards the end of the movie. It honestly does get very emotional. It's very well done. It creates a very interesting dynamic. I just kind of want to touch on Ben Affleck as Batman because it's probably his last performance as Batman. And with the very limited screen time that he has, he does very good. I saw the thing to where he was like, I finally figured out how to play Batman.
And now I'm not Batman.
It's a bit of an odd thing, but I'm happy that Ben Affleck got that chance. There's a number of other cameos in the movie, although they feel more like pop-up than something like Spider-Man No Way Home, to where they have a much larger presence in the movie. They're a little bit more random, but I mean, there's some that'll be like, hey, it's nice to see them again. Some are a little bit weirder, and that is obviously spoiler, so I don't want to get into that. But obviously, if you're a fan of DC, expect some cameos. If you're not a fan of DC, expect to go, who is that? As for the story as a whole, it is a good story. They did handle their version of Flashpoint pretty well with twists and turns that I didn't expect. They did have a very natural set of personal stakes and grandeur stakes in the movie, with the time travel stakes and the personal stakes of Barry doesn't want to lose his parents again when he realizes that he could potentially save them, and then realizes, oh no, that's so bad. Woo! It is a good story. It has a lot of good comedic beats, and it has a lot of good dramatic beats. It's a good balance there. Again, Andy Muschietti did quite a lot there. Christina Hodson, I believe, was one of the writers on the screenplay, and she's a very good writer, clearly. Again, I really wish I could have seen what she would have done with Batgirl, but with what she did here, the story is very good. To get into my negatives, the plot, because story and plot are two different things. The core story of Barry going back in time to try and, do the thing, and then he goes, uh-oh, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. There's so much going on in this movie, plot-wise. The story is very consistent, like, the core story is very good and solid. But the plot, I feel like it just jumps a lot. It just jumps focus between a lot of different things. There's something in the opening of the movie that it seems like, okay, Barry's dealing with this thing, and then, oh, actually, no, he's dealing with this thing. He goes back in time. No, actually, he's dealing with this thing. No, he's dealing with this thing. It's a movie that kind of switches, like, storylines pretty consistently, and it is jarring. It's definitely jarring. It doesn't feel completely smooth. I think if it wasn't for the core story hanging it all together, it would feel very slapdashed. Thankfully, the core story is good, but the plot, it is still messy and rough around the edges. It just definitely feels like there needed to be a certain through line. I don't really want to say who the real antagonist of the movie was, but even then, I still kind of don't know exactly if that's what they were really going for, because it's so quick and they don't really go into it that much. There's certain things they don't really explain that much with the plot. The way I would describe this movie is that it is a loaded ice cream sandwich. Very tasty, but you're gonna throw up afterwards. In my mind, with the plot, it was throwing up all over the place. Still trying to find the moments that I enjoyed, but the plot and also just the behind the scenes production history, it was just so much to unravel through, and it definitely does take the movie down a couple notches for me. I think like if they had a stronger through line and navigated through these different, paths with the story smoother, it could be a great movie. There's really great parts to it. I remember I saw one thing that I can't remember who said it on Twitter, that this movie is many different movies and that they loved some and they hated some. I don't know if there's any part of this movie that I could outright hate, but there are definitely parts that I love. But this is like 9 different movies in one, with what it wants to be plot wise. And I think if it was a little bit more, I guess, seamless, it would take this movie up to another notch for me. I know there are people who have it at that level. Not quite there. There's a lot of good stuff here. One storyline that I don't think they really dived into a lot, and I don't even think that she did a great job with the role, was Kiersey Clemons as Iris. Maybe if I saw it again, I could notice her performance more, but she's not in the movie that much, and there's a certain sentiment to where I almost feel like she's in the movie because she has to be, because she was cast as that character. I don't really sense the chemistry with her and Barry. Not that it really matters, because it's such a minor part of the movie. Definitely doesn't work for me. Her performance and the way they integrated that character didn't really feel natural. I don't even want to say that this next part is a negative, because I actually wasn't bothered by it, but a lot of people have been talking quite a lot about the CG here, because some of it does look very unnatural. Now, what I saw Andy Muschietti said is that a lot of the effects are supposed to look unnatural to show how Barry's vision when he's going so fast is twisted or whatever. I can't remember how he phrased it, but maybe it's because I heard that before I saw the movie. I actually did kind of see what he was going for whenever the Flash was going fast and you saw everything in, I guess, flash vision. Nothing really looked natural, but I thought it looked stylistically like it was supposed to be that way. Technically, the CG in those parts is not good, but I thought it kind of made sense. There's certain parts in movies to where if they can work around it well enough, rough CGI can almost seem passable because of its place in the story. I kind of feel that way here. I definitely am higher on it than some others, but I guess you could say that's the case with the CG here. I mean, I thought a lot of the movie's effects were actually quite impressive. I guess that's just something I definitely want to touch on. Overall, The Flash, it is that ice cream sandwich of a movie. It is enjoyable. It is very enjoyable. It has a very good heart. It's funny. It has a lot of great action. And whether you support the lead actor or not, good performances. But it's plot-wise all over the place, which I think is very emblematic of where DC has been for the past decade, really, because of all the changes in leadership, if there have been any leadership. Not a movie that is perfect by any means, but I cannot say I hate this movie. I liked this movie. I enjoyed it quite a lot. For my objective rating, I would say it's a 7 out of 10. I genuinely think this was a good movie at the very least. If a lot of those things with the plot were streamlined, it could be insanely good. With those things in mind, it goes more to that level, but that's still pretty good. And for subjective, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed The Flash for the bajillionth time. For how much shit this movie went through to get made, I'm just happy for all the people on the cast and crew that worked their asses off to get a movie that is so big, has a lot of heart, and there was a lot of love put into this movie that, for me personally, I don't think one person's shitty reputation and behavior is enough to not look at the thousands and thousands of other people who didn't do that and put so much into this. Again, I said it at the start, I do not blame anybody who does not want to see this movie because of Ezra Miller. The separation between art and the artist is something that we're always talking about whenever it comes to films or any medium or art. And it's definitely very crucial to the way people have been talking about this movie. At the end of the day, I enjoyed The Flash, and if you've been wanting to see it, I would try and see it. It is a crowded summer movie season, but you know, as a comic book fan, it is a good time, despite so much that could have made this movie an utter disaster and was so close to doing so. And now, for the switch into Elemental. For this transition, I'm gonna get some water!
Tasty.
Elemental. I feel like this one should be a lot simpler with The Flash than talking about The Flash, because The Flash made my mind go in so many circles. In case anybody who hasn't read my reviews or knows me, I am an insane Pixar fan. I adore that studio with all my heart. I feel like they have made me who I am, not just as a person, but as a filmmaker, as a storyteller. I like to make movies the way Pixar makes movies, and excuse me, that water is doing me some good. And as a person, it just, I feel like I'm able to, like, you know, emotion more, yes, emotions. Inside Out 2 coming out next year. Yeah, so with all that said, I was, as with pretty much any Pixar movie not named Cars, sorry Cars, I was very excited for the release of Elemental. As I said at the beginning, yes, it's an original Pixar movie getting a theatrical release. Yay! A couple weeks after Across the Spider-Verse, which is, I don't necessarily think that it's bad timing because it is summer movie season. Pixar has released movies around this June spot for so many years, and it's done so well for them, even in the midst of so many other huge blockbusters. I remember Jurassic World, like the second weekend of Jurassic World, Inside Out released, and it made like 90 million, which is pretty impressive. It's definitely not been doing as well because of, I guess, the way people have now perceived Pixar movies as Disney Plus movies, which I really don't like. Soul obviously made sense because it was released in the core of the pandemic, and I don't think they could have really pushed it back further and further and further. Luca, kind of, but Turning Red should not have been a Disney Plus release. That was clearly a move decided by Bob Chapek, so clearly now he's out. That, I don't think that'll be an issue with their movies releasing in theaters. It'll definitely take a while for audiences to get back used to it, but either way, Elemental is a new Pixar movie. It might not be doing well, but for kids and families that are seeing it, I definitely would really recommend it. It is such a nice and sweet movie. It has such a good heart, as all Pixar movies do. I remember the marketing with this movie, like, some people were not huge on it, and I was like, I have full confidence in it. It's had, I want to say, somewhat of a mixed split reception, but I definitely think that's more for, like, I guess, critics, like, trying to read into the deeper levels. Families and kids will absolutely enjoy the ever-living crap out of it, and I think a lot of adults will too, because there is quite a lot of substance to Elemental. Maybe not as much as some of other Pixar's other movies. It's definitely not like in my top 10 or one of the best Pixar movies, but that's also like comparing My Favorite Children, which, I mean, I would do.
I love ranking things.
You know, I adore so much of Pixar. So even their lesser content is still miles above a lot of other things. So even if it's not Pixar's greatest, it still has the Pixar magic, namely with the animation. Obviously, that is, you know, the first thing that you'll notice with any Pixar movie, and it is obviously a gorgeous movie with so many beautiful, beautiful color palettes. I mean, the elemental city that they have here has so many wide range of colors that are just, it's just a really pretty movie to look at. It has a lot of different color palettes going on with the reds and the blues. Obviously, those are always contrasting colors. And the world building with that, combined with that, just makes this movie just such a pleasure to the eyes. Unlike Across the Spider-Verse or other animated movies that are right now trying to blend the realms of CG and hand-drawn, this movie sticks more to traditional CG, I guess, with the environments, but the way the characters are animated is incredibly impressive. Just, like, I don't even know how they did Ember, how much of it was a 3D model, the way they just played with her sense of flames. Like, it almost looks like the flames on her was kind of hand-drawn. It's very cool, the stuff that they did with her. And with Wade as well, they have a lot of fun with the water and the fire. A lot of really pretty scenes with the colors contrasting, and they have a lot of good visual gags in this movie. Pixar is always very good with world building, and this is definitely no exception. I feel like this is definitely a world that I would absolutely want to just explore even more. They don't like overdo it or anything, or be like, this is the thing. They don't treat the audience like the viewer and like the, you know, the first person in a video game. It's like, oh, this is the thing where this happens and this happens and this. They have a very natural fish out of water thing with Ember at points going into the elemental city. Like, the world building here is so natural. It's so seamless. Beautiful animation. Peter Sohn is the director of this movie, and he's worked on so many Pixar movies throughout the year. You've definitely heard his voice as Emile in Ratatouille, as Socks in Lightyear, Genki in Across the Spider-Verse. He's done a lot of different voices in Pixar movies. He's worked on a lot of different Pixar movies. I believe he was the director behind The Good Dinosaur, which is actually one I still haven't seen, but that is one where Pixar has had a lot of troubled history with. But this movie, I'll get into the story more later, but it seems to be, as all Pixar movies are, it is incredibly personal for him, and he leads the animation team so well in like diving into this world. It's a wonder to the eyes. It's something I love exploring. I feel like this would be a very good world to explore in like shorts. Oh, speaking of, Carl's Date, the short that comes before the movie, if you do see it in theaters, absolutely wonderful, wholesome, has one of Ed Asner's last performances as Carl, and I wanted to cry before the movie even started. And I think that about covers it for that, because shocker, Pixar. A lot of comparisons to Zootopia have been made, and I could see it a little bit in both the actual world and the way the world plays into the story. I don't think it's like a one-to-one thing, and I don't feel like it's a ripoff by any means, because even though they have a similar thing where, you know, segmenting different groups of people, city that is like combining all of these different things, I don't feel like it's ripping off Zootopia at all. It feels like just similar, like a similar idea, but they definitely make it their own. It's like actual cultures in a city has their own identity, and you could see that with the fire people. I don't know what they're actually called. The water people, the earth. I'm trying to also avoid saying tribe, because then I'm just going to think Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I could go on forever if I started that. Wonderful production design, wonderful cinematography, all that jazz. Also a core element of the world building and also the emotions with the story is Thomas Newman's score. He does another wonderful score. I mean, you've probably seen a movie with a Thomas Newman score if you watched a Pixar movie. It's his first Pixar movie in a while, I believe since Finding Dory. You could hear the Thomas Newman stamp quite a bit over this movie, but he does so much with playing with, I guess, the different like cultures of this world, because the movie goes quite a lot to exploring the culture, the long-standing culture and traditions of the different races, if you will. His score just captures so much of that. He does a lot of interesting things with the choir in the score that I feel like adds a really nice texture throughout. It adds like the auditorial texture of the world, and it also puts the emotional emphasis that you would also want the score to do. It's a wonderful score. I mean, with this and Across the Spider-Verse score, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them got a nomination for Best Original Score, because both are outstanding scores, and this is no exception. Thomas Newman, he needs to get his Oscar at some point. Will it be with this movie? It's too early to say in the year, but he did such a great job with the score. It was a lot of fun. To talk about the characters with this movie, I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember the name of the voice actors because it is mostly a non-celebrity cast, which I think is honestly really cool. Ember's voice actress, she's here. She did a great job as Ember, which is, I guess, unsurprising because Pixar always does that. I'm really glad that they chose, I believe she's an Asian actress. What am I doing with my hands? And she does a really great job with Ember. Her parents too in the movie have so much texture. I don't want to go into the opening of this movie, but once you see the opening of this movie, you really are emotionally hooked to the parents. And it just really does feel like I know Peter Sohn based it on his immigrant experience, and you could see that so vividly with the way that these actors portrayed these characters so well. Wade is also a lot of fun in his family when you see them very briefly. The chemistry between the two, since this is primarily a romance movie, is very good. You definitely really do believe the characters, Ember and Wade, falling for each other. It was one of the most intriguing aspects of this movie, since Pixar rarely does movies where the romance is central, and it's works very well here. A lot of fun characters. I can't remember who Catherine O'Hara plays, but I know she voices a role, so it's always nice to, I guess, hear her. I can't even think of that many cameos, really, in terms of the voice actors. It's just fun just seeing all the different characters inhabit this world. And with the story itself, it is incredibly sweet. It has such a nice connection between Ember and Wade. You fall for them as they're falling instantly. It definitely is a movie where Ember is the lead character and Wade is, I wouldn't even say he's a co-protagonist. They're both very interesting characters. Ember's family is interesting. Her family history and that, play back and forth of, should I stay or should I go? It's, very interesting and a lot of fun. There's obviously a number of cliches here, which is, I guess, to say expected for any Pixar movie, because they use those to, I guess, rank in the kids and have the adult themes layered underneath for the adults to really dive into. None of the cliches feel too egregious here, so that's definitely good. So many good comedic gags. I was really laughing at a lot of points here. Pixar movies are always pretty funny, but the connections between the characters felt very natural. Obviously, it's
Now going for race.
and it doesn't feel too heavy-handed, but it also feels very, I guess, well explored. It feels like a very natural symbolic connection. It's the type of thing that a lot of Pixar movies do, where they do a very good job at explaining such an adult concept for kids. Like, I feel like this will be a very good movie for kids to learn about so many different things with different cultures and the way that different cultures interact, specifically within a city. To get into some of the negatives, I do believe the pacing, like, it goes very fast. I feel like I've noticed this a lot with the last couple Pixar movies, that it goes from one thing to the next very quickly. We have short attention spans,
which may be true. And also, it's a kid's movie still, or a movie that kids need to watch, so it needs to be under 2 hours.
So it's a movie that goes very fast, specifically with the first 30 minutes. I feel like the first 30 minutes, I really want to have time to breathe these characters, and it didn't give them quite yet. Definitely starts to slow down a little bit after that, but you could still feel that it's trudging along a little bit too quickly. I want to just soak in the world. Sorry, pun. Definitely just makes the story go by faster. At first I thought it was going to be a little bit more plotty, to where like there's going to be some overarching thing. There's not really that, which I actually found to be a relief, but the pacing kind of led me into thinking that. So I don't know if there is a really natural way to rework that, or if they really just needed 20 more minutes added onto the runtime, which, you know, again, for a movie meant for families and kids, on top of adults too, that is longer for an anime movie, but hey, Spider-Verse proved that it could work. And hey, I think that Pixar is well earned doing whatever they want with running time. That's definitely something that makes this movie good, not great, but it is still very good. Kind of tied into that, there are a couple things that feel slightly underdeveloped in the movie. Nothing like too major, like the core storylines work. You know, you believe Ember and Wade's romance, you believe Ember's relationship with her family. So, you know, the core stuff works. It's like very like little things, like I want to see more of the earth and the air groups in the movie. Any movie that kids need to watch, you have to have some dialogue that's a little bit more telling to them. But there's some dialogue that really is just like,
Time for exposition, daughter.
it definitely did take me out of the movie, but that's just my movie brain. But overall, it is still such a fun time. I was smiling throughout. It might not be Pixar's best, but Pixar's best are so high that even if it's like still pretty damn good, it's still pretty damn good. It is a movie that I had fun with. A lot of people are going to have fun with. It has a really nice set of characters, touching romance. I did get emotional at some points, not as much as other Pixar movies, but definitely like enough to where like you could feel that classic Pixar touch there. For my objective rating, it's actually not too far off from The Flash. I'm going to say it's a 7.5 out of 10. And subjective, I enjoyed it quite a lot. I want to say it's like closer to how much I enjoy Luca as opposed to Turning Red and Soul in terms of recent Pixar movies. But again, I still enjoyed it quite a lot. I am endlessly happy to see one of my favorite studios have another original movie back in theaters that I think is just a good time. It's a busy summer movie season. A lot of good things coming out. A lot of good things for kids out right now too. You know, with Spider-Man, and I guess The Little Mermaid. I'm not really excited for that whenever I have to watch it. But if families can make it out to this, I think it is quite a good time. If adults can make it out to this, I think they're also in for a good time too. It's a Pixar movie, so, you know, people talking about the downfall of Pixar, they don't know what they're talking about. They are like any other studios where they make movies and every movie will be different strokes for different folks. Some are going to hit more people than others, and no matter what, I think this is still a good time, worth watching, especially if you're a Pixar fan. But if you're a fan of animation, if you're just a fan of a good time, watch Elemental. And I believe there we have it for my first double feature review. I'm going to take another water break. Timeliness is something that I need to master. But for now, I'm just going to accept the fact that I can talk out of my ass for God knows how long, and I just hope you enjoyed it, everyone. Yeah, you there, little tyke, or I hope you enjoyed it. Me talking about two movies that aren't doing well at the box office, but hey, you want to go see them? Go see them. That's kind of what I always say. Don't let me tell you what to do, even though that's kind of my job. Like, if you do see these movies, let me know. Let me know what you thought of The Flash and Elemental. And thank you for checking this out. Whether you're coming back from the Across the Spider-Verse review, whether you're a new watcher, whether I know you or I don't know you, I appreciate the watch. It's definitely going to be a bit for my next review, because I'm going to be going on a big trip very soon. Hopefully during that trip I will be able to see Indiana Jones and the Dials of Destiny, but whether I'll be able to review that, I'm not quite sure. Definitely not during the trip. When my next video review will be out, I'm not exactly sure, but I definitely want to get this out. Thank you all for watching, quite a lot. Time to say the YouTuber thing. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that things, share with people. I just want to make people smile. I think these are movies that can make people smile. I want to make you smile. Even if I talk about a movie that I eventually hate, I want to make you smile. I want my pain to make you happy. Yeah! I believe I should be able to be back in time for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. And definitely Barbie Oppenheimer Day. That is a day that no cinephile must miss at all. But until then, have yourselves a great night, or day, or evening, or afternoon, or dawn, and take care, everyone. Oh, dear God.